and welcome to Deeply Curious. My name is Cody Jensen, and joining me in our New York City studio apartment is my wife, Sarah.
Hello.
And this podcast is all about us as a married couple just exploring things that we find interesting, whether that be philosophical or trivial or pop culture, just us having a conversation and finding things that we're curious about.
Yeah.
And diving deep into them, hence the name, Deeply Curious. This podcast is sponsored by Hint Water. Hint is a water company that makes flavored water. They have a still and a sparkling version, and it is zero everything. It is just water with a hint of flavor, and it is sugar and sweetener free, so no guilt on drinking a flavored drink. The fizz for me completely replaces soda. I don't need to drink or have like a craving to drink soda whenever I have Hint Fizz around, because it just takes care of that bubbly that I'm looking for. Yeah. So if you're interested in checking out Hint Water, they have tons of flavors. I haven't even tried all of them. I've tried a bunch. Our fridge is completely full of Hint, but I still have not tried all of them. If you want to check it out, you can go to hint.co/deeplycurious. You can also find Hint in pretty much all grocery stores and maybe even your local convenience store.
Maybe.
So for this episode, we don't have like a very specific topic. It's just going to be, we're just going to start talking, see where this ends up. And I wanted to kind of start the conversation just talking about some recent cultural events.
Oh, which ones?
Well, one that I literally just saw and kind of dove into an article is, what do you think about Elon Musk and Grimes?
Okay, I've seen a lot of photos because of the Met Gala. I don't actually know who she is, though. I guess the whole thing is that she's like so young and like typical white dude. Like that's what you do. You divorce your wife and then you go for someone super young. But I don't understand. Is that the whole thing about it?
I mean, yeah, basically. Well, the age difference, but also just the very stark like difference of very nerdy, quirky Silicon Valley. Yeah. Like CEO on like entrepreneur venture guy. Yeah. Who, thinks it's, fun to like make flamethrowers. Yeah.
And start candy companies.
Right. So basically a very, very intelligent child with unlimited money. Yeah. So really fun to watch. Yeah. And then there's Grimes, who I also hadn't heard of, is a punk artist, basically. I mean I listen to music and it's not punk music. Okay. It's just kind of a darker pop electronic sound. Okay. But her style, very goth punk.
Do you know how old she is?
30.
And he's,
I don't know,
mid 40s.
How old is Elon Musk?
Elon Musk is 46. 46. Yeah, so 16 years. I think that's what I saw. Yeah, I mean, maybe like appearance-wise, they don't seem to fit. But also like, I mean, yes, Elon Musk is like very smart and intelligent, has a lot of money to, whatever. But he is also like a kid. Right? Like, I mean, he's not this, I don't want to make anybody mad because it's not that I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, but I don't know how much I like put weight on what he does or whatever, because I feel like more recently he's just been kind of like sensational and just like doing crazy things for fun, for the sake of nothing. I don't know. Like, so it kind of like, it makes me just wonder like what he's actually doing and like is his smart things like the hyperloop that he's talked about building. I feel like that's so cool, but like how much weight can I actually give that? Because he also decided out of nowhere that he's going to create flamethrowers. Then when he found out he can't ship flamethrowers, he decided that he's going to create fire extinguishers to ship with the flamethrowers, so that way it was allowed or whatever. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh yes, and I'm going to start a candy company and it's going to be amazing. I'm like, what's happening? Like, I don't, it's confusing to me because he's kind of like all over the map. So I don't know if it's that surprising. You know what I mean? If you look at it like that.
Yeah. I mean, based on his recent actions, it's not that surprising.
Yeah.
It's actually the thing that's most surprising to me is Elon Musk with a girlfriend.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who it is.
It doesn't, he seems like he'd be with nobody.
Yeah.
He just like is so all over the map right now that like, I totally think that he like, his intelligence and everything is very valid and, you know, whatever, like he's making major, like he's a revolutionary in a lot of ways, right? A visionary, but he's just kind of all over the map. So I don't know if I trust him as much as I did.
I mean, that doesn't really bother me because all people are like so multifaceted that like just because he's like rich and super smart doesn't mean he can't make the first reusable rocket ever.
No, yeah.
And revolutionize the electric car industry and create a flamethrower.
Right. I don't disagree with that.
And also I think like what's really cool about the flamethrower is it came out of the idea of, well, he created the Boring Company hat. Well, he created the Boring Company to revolutionize the hole drilling industry, the tube, whatever, what do you call it, tunnel drilling. So he ended up selling, I don't remember, it was insane. A lot of hats.
Yeah.
In that, all those hats are funding the project. And so that like spurred into what else could I do to fund the project? And then just because he's, basically a bachelor, like with tons of money, he's like, well, I'll just do flamethrowers.
Right.
Which I think is super fun to watch.
Oh, it is. It's super fun to watch. And I don't think that there's necessarily anything that's like alarming about what he's doing. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, is he crazy? You know, like there's nothing like alarming, but there's just something like once he started doing all these things and like, I don't know, it just like made me go like, oh, I mean, what is he doing? Like, I don't know. It just, it's different than like I viewed him before. I viewed him as a very serious businessman and now I don't. Not that he's not a serious businessman, but just all of the like quirks are.
I find it interesting that you wouldn't see him as a serious businessman just because he likes to have fun. Because I feel like basically I would assume that all serious businessmen do crazy and fun things when they're not being a serious businessman.
I don't doubt that.
He just happens to bring them together.
But I don't think that I don't see him as a serious businessman. Just because he likes to have fun. No, I said I think that you can, and I think that he is, and I feel like he's really smart, and he's, you know, whatever. But there's just like, I just view him different now. And I don't know what it is. I don't trust him any less. I don't think that he's doing any less good or that he's a little too crazy. Maybe it's all of the fans. There's like a different level because like when you're like a serious businessman, you don't really have like fans, like and he has fans, right? Like people who are like diehard. I'm gonna buy this because it's Elon Musk. Who cares? Whatever. Like retweeting him all day, every day. Like there's just something like about the way that he's like gaining traction is just completely different than anything else. And it's not that it's bad, but I just like, I view him different. I don't think that he's any less than what he was before. Yeah.
I mean, that made me just think about, this may be too big of a word to use, but I'm just trying to think of another like CEO. Let's just take Steve Jobs and say like, you know, if he was still alive and he was around and you like saw him on the street, I feel like you would hold like this reverence for him and like what he's doing. And I think that I feel like that's what Elon Musk used to be as well. Like you held like, I don't know, there was like this.
I kind of called him the Steve Jobs of the
it was like
car
it was almost like like the president, like respect for the office. It was almost you had like this thing, but now it's not any less, it's just different. Like because being able to connect with that person on like on the Twitter level and like them doing weird, funny, quirky things and showing how much humanity is in the person, I think it it just makes it different.
Right.
Like now it's like if you saw Elon Musk on the street, you would almost run up to him as a fan.
Right.
Versus if like a Steve Jobs, you would probably maybe even not go up to him and be like, whoa, there's Steve Jobs and like whatever.
There's like a silent respect that you like don't cross a certain line or whatever. And I feel like it's not there with Elon Musk because he has opened that. And it's not, like I said, it's not a bad thing necessarily. It's just, it's different to combine like a fandom and like a serious like revolutionary, right?
Yeah.
It's weird to combine those things.
Yeah, it's weird like thinking about it because it's like it's not that you lose respect because it's like the same amount of respect, but
and I actually appreciate
different.
That. Yeah, I appreciate that he's like kind of who even knows what, just like crazy in not the literal sense, but
this also poses the question of super rich people and what they do with their money.
Yeah,
and say like Elon Musk has, I mean, essentially unlimited funds. I mean, to broaden the scope here.
Yeah.
Essentially unlimited funds for himself. And he chooses to use those funds for seemingly trivial things or things
like
that don't embetter humanity.
Right.
Do you think that there's any obligation for a person of extreme wealth to have to use that wealth to make humanity better?
Okay, well, there's multiple questions in there. So, first of all, we're not talking about Elon Musk specifically because I still feel like he's doing good things with his money.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
creating
all of them are.
Yeah, but like specifically, Elon's is like creating like revolutionary cars and the Hyperloop and things that will like better humanity, right? But then
I guess I shouldn't say all of them are because they're definitely like oil tycoons.
Right. Like I don't think all rich people are doing.
But I was personally just thinking like even like the Amazon CEO, even though he's just building Amazon and stuff like that, it is for the embetterment of.
Yeah, but
like,
is it though?
Yeah, it's more convenient. It helps people. Like.
Okay, well, I just have a very complicated relationship with Amazon. So maybe that's just an opinion. I don't know. Here's what I think, though. I think that can you say that rich people have to allocate a certain amount to better humanity? No, because like they're the one earning the money, right? But do they have an obligation? I think so. I think that obviously we can't tell them you have to donate 20% of blah, 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 right? We can't do that. But I think as people, they have an obligation, yes. And especially like, let's take CEO of Amazon, for example, because I have a very, like I said, complicated feeling about him. Or not him necessarily, I don't know him, but what I do know, like the articles I've read. He's worth $122 billion is how much money he has, right? And like there's all these reports of like how bad the work environment is in Amazon like as a whole and how much like their employees aren't paid and aren't benefited. And I feel like he has an obligation there, right?
Which before just to counter that specific point, I read an article the other day about that and the reason that came out, and it is not because it was all about how Amazon warehouse employees, like, 20% of them or whatever were on food stamps. That is not accurate.
Okay.
That came from a sensational story that came from one story out of one state and one facility.
Okay.
It was that, I don't remember the exact percentage, but let's just say 20% because it's kind of a large number. 20%, I don't even remember the state. I'm going to use Michigan. Just So 20% of Michigan Amazon employees are on food stamps, but it was 20% of Michigan families. And so, and the report did not take into account whether the family, the person on food stamps was the person actually working on Amazon or not. So it could be that, the wife is working at Amazon, and but she has a husband who is out of a job and on food stamps at home, but that is a family unit.
Right.
And
so
that,
it counts.
So that counts.
Gotcha.
And so to say that 20% of Amazon employees
That's
is
much
huge,
bigger. Yeah.
but it's actually just, there was a story from one state, one facility, and it was distributed among families, not even the specific Amazon employees.
Gotcha.
So it was just a massive sensational story that came out of it.
Right. But that's not the only story I've heard, to be fair.
Yeah.
But I do think, and that's not, so it's just like, you take the Flint water. I've seen a lot of this on Twitter. You take the Flint water crisis. Mm-hmm. It would cost $55 million to fix Flint water, which in the grand scheme of things is not that much money to fix like a major crisis that's causing a lot of illness and disease and, everything. And you take the top 5, not all of the richest billionaires, the top 5, and all of them make more than 55 billion or something, or 50 billion. And it only takes 55 million to fix Flint's water. Mm-hmm. And like I said, Jeff Bezos is 122 billion, and the number 5 is like 50 or 55 billion. Mm-hmm. They would all only have to donate not very much of their money of the top 5 people to fix Flint's water crisis. Yeah, but that's only 5 people. Yeah. If you take, there's actually, I read an article the other day of, because it was talking about the growing wealth gap, because it just continues to get bigger and bigger and impossible. And there are now over 2,000 billionaires. That in 2017, I can't remember how many people were added to the billionaire list, but now there's over 2,000. And I was just talking about how like it's so easy for the rich people to become billionaires now, and it's so hard for other people to make money. Mm-hmm. That was like the whole conversation. So let's just take 2,000 billionaires. That's it. Of the richest of the rich, the 1%, there are billionaires, 2,000 of them.
There are 2,000 people who have $1 billion?
Over 2,000, yes.
Wow.
I can find that article. Anyways, over 2,000 are billionaires now. And it only costs $55 million to fix Flint's water. And I just don't understand, like, why? Like, as human beings, I think we have an obligation. Now, I'm not saying that Jeff Bezos is responsible for Flint's water problem, right? Mm-hmm. But, like, you have $122 billion. What are you doing with that? What are you doing? And why is it so important to just get more of it? Mm-hmm. And, like, there's an article about, again, the wealth gap. But it was talking about, like, how much money billionaire or rich people, maybe not necessarily billionaires, but the 1%, right? How much of them actually donate to charities of any kind? Mm-hmm. Obviously, Bill Gates is the top of the list, right? But, like, Jeff Bezos was the bottom of the list. Like, he donated
even though he's, like, the
hardly
richest.
anything. I think I might get this wrong, but I think it was around, like, 200,000, which is a decent amount of money, but not when you own 122 billion. Mm-hmm. That's literally nothing, you know? And it's like, I feel like you have a responsibility. And also with Amazon, they're kind of killing a bunch of other companies, and I have a problem with that too. But anyway, that's beside the point. I think you have an obligation as a human being to better the world, and all you're doing is growing more wealth for yourself, widening the gap, not giving to the community, and it's just causing what's happening.
Do you think that if those billionaires have an obligation to give money to and better the world, do you think that the bottom 2% also has the obligation to give money to and better the world?
Yes, I think everybody has an obligation to do what they can. And it just so happens that the wealthier people have a better opportunity to give more.
Right.
That's all. But, like,
let's say, like, somebody is below the poverty line, and to give the same amount of percentage, they would have to give, $100 or something. But that $100 is the same proportionally as what Jeff Bezos is giving, but disproportionately affects their livelihood.
Right. No, I don't think it should be like a percentage like that. I think it should be according to like what you can do to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Like if all you can give is $1, give $1. Like who cares? It's all about the heart. It's like for me, it's a heart issue, and kind of like gratitude
Mm-hmm.
and just wanting to make the world better. And so like if you can do that with your $1 and a smile, do it with $1 and a smile. Jeff Bezos has the opportunity to do it with millions of dollars, but he's not. You know, it just, it feels like, to me, it just seems kind of like a really selfish approach to just like grow your wealth and then do nothing with it. Because also you're going to die and then you're just going to have $122 billion in the bank. What for? Like to give to your family, sure. But then what else? Like they don't need $122 billion. You don't need $122 billion. Like that's an outrageous amount of money. Do something with it. That's what I think. I don't know. I just think it's like the posture that you have toward humanity. It's like, it's a heart issue. And I don't think that he hasn't, or a lot of rich people haven't shown that they have a heart for humanity. And I also am very against the growing wealth gap because it just makes everything so unfair and so difficult and so impossible for so many people. And that's not okay. That's not fair. I mean, why do you want to live in a world where you are rich, but the world sucks? Because nobody else can make money.
I mean, but the world doesn't suck to those people.
But it should.
But
you should walk down the street and see how awful life is and let it do something to you.
I mean, because they're so removed from reality that
I know, but that's the problem. Right? Like that's the problem.
I mean, obviously
Jeff Bezos doesn't go to Flint, Michigan to see all the children who are sick because they don't have clean water.
Yeah, but I mean, I also believe that I wish and hope that billionaires would do more to better humanity, because I think that there's so much opportunity there to change. I mean, everything. I mean, I think potentially the ability to cure cancer is in one of them donating enough, like I don't know what it would be, but. You know, how much would it take to end world hunger? How much would it take to, find a cure for a myriad of things? I think the potential is there for that to be, all those things to be solved if they came together and did it. That being said, on the contrary, you're saying if Jeff Bezos visited Flint, Michigan and saw the problem,
I would hope he would be moved.
Yes.
Yes.
But also it's like, take the side of him, I guess, and say, I have worked my way from the bottom, built this up, and acquired this massive amounts of wealth. At what obligation do I have to give part of what I have earned to a city or a town that have screwed themselves over?
Right.
And, it's like self-inflicted wounds here. At what obligation do I have to give
Here's
that?
The thing.
And do I think he should? Yes. I mean, but I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate there.
I absolutely agree that you sort of don't owe anybody anything. Like that's kind of the mindset that you're presenting, right? I get it. Like you work hard for what you have, and that is totally okay. I still, though, go back to one, you have to have a heart for humanity. Like if you are a human being and you don't have a heart for humanity, I don't understand what you're doing or who you are. Like, why are you here, right? Like we're human beings on this earth together. Like that should do something to you, right? To see another human being in pain. But also too, and this is more the government and the growing wealth gap than it is rich people, because I feel like if you were a rich person and you could take advantage of everything that the government is offering to you, you absolutely would and should, and you're stupid not to, right? But then like why are we giving them, like if they were taxed, like everybody else fairly, that's too much to get into, but if they were taxed like they probably should be taxed, the government would have more money to allocate to all of these crises, right? Like the Flint water and poverty and cancer and everything, right? Like the government would have more money that we would hope they would steward correctly to put toward these crises, so that it wouldn't be an obligation to the rich people because they're doing their due diligence and paying their taxes correctly, right? So it's sort of like, maybe that's my bigger issue.
It sounds like your bigger issue is humanity, because
yes, it is.
All of the money that, let's say, the billionaires were taxed correctly or higher or something, and the government got all that money, then you'd have to trust the humanity of the government to actually use that for altruistic methods and modes, and spurring on innovation and things like that. So and then also you are hoping and wishing that the altruism of the billionaires, they would use their money, for the same thing. And right now, it doesn't feel as though either one of them are doing that. So your problem is more with humanity in general, at large.
Yes.
That people aren't, like, instead of looking at, Flint's government, that they aren't fixing their water, look at the people that are suffering at the hand of that, and step in and say, I don't care that it's self-inflicted. I'm going to help the people affected, not those who inflicted.
Right.
And
then, like, do that, and then, like, play damage control and figure out, I don't know. I just, everything's a mess, Everything is a mess. And I just feel like there are certain things, like, do I think, like, if Jeff Bezos just was like, I'm going to pay for Flint's water problem, I'm going to fix it, right? Do I think the problems would actually go away or be fixed? No. But at least, like, children would have clean water, right? So,
and we'd have a new town called Amazon Flint.
Yeah, that's true.
Because the if he's given that much money, that somebody's name's on that. Bezosville.
And that's fine. It can't Bezosville. That's fine. But I don't think it's like the solution, but I do think that it has its merit. Like, I think that they have an obligation as human beings to do something good with the money that they've, at least some of the money. Like, and that's the thing. I don't feel like asking, billionaires to donate some of what they've earned is a bad thing or like an unfair thing. Like, what are you going to do with $122 billion? Just there, you cannot spend it. Like, there's no way you can do it. So, like, just like use it for good a little bit. Not all of it, but just like 20 billion, You're still worth over 100 billion at that point. Like, just do something good with it. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. It's confusing and I don't get it.
Yeah. I do agree and hope and wish that, that some of these, ultra wealthy people, like, would start, like, just using it for good, even if the motives are just to
get your name out
there.
Yeah,
because
that's fine, whatever.
I mean, maybe these people's names will live on in history just because of how much money they have, but there are names like Rockefeller or things like that that are prolific.
They're solidified, will be forever.
And it's like, what if, let's just use Bezos since we're already talking about him. What if Bezos, like, took on the mission of cancer, let's say.
Right.
And he said, like...
Which Bill Gates kind of already has.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, more malaria and, like, poverty and, like, all sorts of, like, global issues and things like that. I mean, not that cancer's not global. Anyways. But let's just... I don't...
We can say cancer. That's fine.
I mean, yeah, it's just... I'm not versed enough in, like, that to even... I'm just... This may come off of ignorant because I'm not, like, actually versed in it, but I'm just going to use an example anyway. And just say, like, treated it like it was the moon landing and said, like, I'm going to inspire a generation, a country into, like, action.
Right.
By giving tons of money and being inspiration and saying, like, by 2021, whatever, like, we are going to have progress, like, we're going to find a cure for this specific type of cancer or whatever.
Right.
And instead of basically inspiring an entire group of people and funding the action
Right.
to make it happen. Because it's like with, the moon landing, it's like it would have never happened if there wasn't a deadline on it, with money and inspiration being like brought, together and inspiring, like, racing to the moon. It's like, what if we were using that same method to race to end world hunger, race to cure cancer, race to fix Flint water, like,
Right.
All that type of stuff. Like, what good? I mean,
like, there's no urgency, it seems.
Yeah.
To, I guess, help people. I don't know, like, what the term is, but it just seems like there's no urgency to figure out hunger and poverty and all of those things. And I think that nobody is prioritizing it. It feels like nobody is prioritizing.
Nobody in the mainstream.
Yes, that's what I mean. Like, it feels like nobody in the spotlight is really prioritizing, like, hey, look, these are major issues. Let's figure it out, right? And the government is not helping. That's a whole other situation. But they're not, really, like, setting the precedent. And then I feel like the majority of the ultra rich aren't setting a precedent. And everybody else is kind of like, their hands are tied. They're like, well, I mean, I have to work 80 hours a week to pay rent, so I don't really have time to do anything or money, because it's all going to, like, try and survive. Right. So it's like, I don't know. It's just.
Yeah. I mean, because there are thousands, if not millions of people all working to, like, fix these issues, and, like, it's like in their heart and all that type of stuff. The anonymous heroes. But it's like they're underfunded, or underhelped,
overworked,
or not, like, maybe even it's that, if some of these people were brought together, like, new connections and whatever would be made. But I just wonder. Basically, this is just a thought experiment. It's not necessarily a like, I have the answer.
Like, here's a solution we should try.
This is more like a thought experiment of what would happen if one of these uber rich people spearheaded something.
Because it takes, media attention, and it takes buzz and talk about, and, whatever, for people to be informed, to, like, and not just to be informed, but it reminds me kind of there's a book called Blue Like Jazz by Donna Miller. And in the very beginning of the book, he's talking about how he hated jazz music his whole life, because jazz doesn't resolve. It's just ongoing, and he hated that. But one day there was this jazz musician playing on the street, and he just sat and watched him for a really long time. And he said, I didn't love jazz until I watched somebody else love jazz. And I feel like it's kind of the same. Like, you have to watch somebody else's passion for something in order for you to get passionate about it. And I feel like nobody's doing that. Like, that's what needs to happen. Like, there needs to be passion from somebody with influence to be like, hey, look, world hunger sucks. We're going to do something about it. And I want you to be part of it with me, right? Like, that is powerful. And nobody's really doing that.
Is how Ryan Gosling saved jazz.
That is how Ryan Gosling saved jazz. That's such a good SNL skit. If you haven't seen that, totally worth the watch. But yeah, it's like that, That's kind of how I feel like. Nobody is really, like, setting the precedent. Nobody that I have seen in, like, the spotlight is setting any sort of precedent for it. And so everyone's just kind of like, yeah, I mean, it sucks, but what do I do about it?
Yeah. It's very out there. It would be, I would love to be alive whenever, the next, like, race to the moon happens, like, whatever that is.
When the whole country rallies around something, they're like, we are going to accomplish this. That's powerful and inspiring, and we're not doing that right now. We haven't been for a long time.
Yeah.
And you can argue, like, the climate, the political climate we're in, you know, has a lot to do with it, and I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think
like it's like what could possibly unite all in saying like
right.
what could not be politicized, because it feels like
every single thing is politicized.
It feels like you're like, oh yeah, that is a great well, let's just say like immigration and,
right.
and like taking in people who refugees,
right, who
it's
need
like,
a home.
Up until just years ago, refugees were not a political thing.
Right. Everyone was like, oh yeah, they're estranged from their homeland. Yes.
It's like
they deserve everything.
Yeah.
And now it's like,
if an American city was under attack and there were people being like murdered and oppressed and like, you know, all this stuff, and they had to escape
right
into somewhere else, all other people would like, oh my gosh, yes, bring my neighbors over. But because it's like another country, it changes the political landscape now, not before. But anyways, basically just getting at that, before that was not politicized. It was a global issue. It was just a issue that people had to take on. And
that people were willing to take on.
And so now it's like, it feels like no matter, you could take anything and somehow somebody's going to divide it and make it a political issue. And
I think especially right now, because the leader that we have is so...
Are you talking about Trump?
Yeah, I just didn't want to say
he who should not be named.
He who shall not be named is so polarizing that it's impossible really to find any kind of common ground, you know? And like he just makes everything sensational, right? And so it's like really difficult to rally with somebody who is like that. And so I don't...
because those who are with him, and then those, even if he does something good for all people, those, because of everything that he said,
I can never in good conscience back Trump, right? Because I don't care if he maybe did something that wasn't the dumbest thing ever, right? But then like the next day he's going to tweet about something crazy and we're all going to be blown up by nuclear bombs, right? So there's just like, it doesn't really matter if he does anything good. I can't back him in good conscience, right?
Yes. But that's kind of the point though that I'm making, is that you have to take it, because of the office of the president, you have to take it case by case and not as a whole. Because just because he is a racist, misogynist, like
terrible human being
person, like it is very difficult when he does something good to actually allow it to be like, oh,
to give him any sort of credit.
Oh, he did something good. Because
you know
it's impossible like for anybody to never do anything good. And you know, it's like, nobody's all good or all bad. But because it's surrounded with such like stuff, it's hard for anybody like to just look past and be like, oh yeah, he did sympathize with white supremacists,
and if you were in support,
but I'm gonna look past that because he did this good thing, and it's like,
and like if you were in support of him, you're like, you have to, it's sort of this idea like you have to support everything he does, otherwise like admit
I think
fault.
that's probably more the problem, is that that's the political divide right there, is that you have to be all supportive or all not, and that's basically that. So that's what I'm getting at. What would be the thing that all of America could get behind and not feel like, oh, I can't be for that because Trump is for that, and or the other side saying I'm against that because Trump is against that, or whatever it is. And you know, because it's like, if Trump was to champion something like amazing, like it was, well, we were talking about cancer, so let's just say, like, for some, like, Trump decided that the best thing he could possibly do with his time in the office is spur a country to cure cancer. Could the left and like those so against him actually get behind it and to make it happen? Could he be successful in that? because of how divided everything is.
Right.
And I would hope so, yes, but it kind of feels like no. It kind of feels like it's going to take some, like if somebody's going to champion something that big and bring a whole country together, it's going to have to start afresh.
Well, here's the thing. I think that you can't be so polarizing, and like it can't be a character who is so polarizing as Trump, who rallies an entire country.
Mm-hmm.
His goal from the beginning was not to rally an entire country, right? Like, I feel like you can't, like, it's impossible. It's an impossible task to have somebody like that to say, like, could people get behind him? Because he doesn't want that. He likes.
Yes. I mean, but that's talking specifically of what is happening, like the, divide and conquer. But I'm saying if he was to change his mind, and which he does a lot, which isn't a bad thing. Like, it's funny.
Maybe you just shouldn't, like, put it on Twitter. Yeah.
It's funny that it happens, but I mean, changing your mind is good. Like, well, I mean, depending on what you're changing your mind about.
Yeah.
But, we should all be learning.
Everyone
and growing
learns and grows and
everything.
whatever. It depends on, like,
But let's say, just say he did change his mind, like, he surrounded himself with some amazing people, and like he decided like something amazingly altruistic was like the goal of our nation. Could we all get behind him and actually do it?
I mean, I'm just thinking, me personally, my immediate thought is, don't know. Like, I legit, I would just have to like live in that and see. Maybe over time I could, whatever.
I think it would be very difficult.
I'm a very like, I like justice, and not in a like, I want people to get what they deserve way, but like, I feel like I like fairness. I think everything needs to be fair, and for an entire country to rally around Trump and like praise him for like taking on this thing, that's not fair. He's a terrible human being, right? So there's a piece of me that's like, I don't know if I actually would or could. And I'm not even like a crazy left liberal whatever. Like I feel like I'm pretty middle of the road, like, depending on the issue, right? So I don't know.
Here's a good question. What is the difference between justice and revenge?
Okay. Well, I think revenge is... Okay. Oh gosh. This is like a really heavy question to answer on the spot. I think revenge is like a personal thing, right? So like you have a vendetta for somebody because they did something to you, and like that is your sole purpose, is to hurt them like they hurt you, right? That's revenge. And I think I think of justice on not a personal level. So like if I'm like getting revenge to somebody, it's like a personal thing. But like, for example, like when we killed bin Laden, there were...
We did it personally.
We did. Yeah. Yes, I was there. Yeah. Okay. There were a lot of people who kind of had like there were mixed reactions, I guess. Like everybody was like, yes, he's dead. And then there were some people who were like, why did we, like, who are we as human beings to decide if somebody gets to die or not, right? Like that's kind of...
or more so, celebrate the death of somebody.
Yeah. Like, isn't that playing God? And, like that kind of conversation. And it's, I think, kind of the same conversation as death row, that kind of idea. Like, yeah, they're terrible human beings, but do we get to decide the end of their life, right? Like, is that appropriate or not? And so, which I feel like the majority of people were like, yes, he's dead. But there was that argument that I heard. And I feel like I don't know. At the time, I didn't know how I felt about it, but like, I don't think that it's a bad thing that he's dead. I mean, I feel like, I guess, neutral about it. But like, I would consider like that mission of killing bin Laden, I would consider that justice, not revenge, right? So, because he was obviously leading, terrorist groups and like that whole conversation, right? So it's like, you take down the leader, you take down them all.
Well, that is like,
and so
who has the right to justice? I mean, I guess it's just the government, because let's say in your life that somebody murdered your family or something like that. And, you know, they basically, okay, no, let's take a different example. Let's just take bin Laden and say that a family member who was affected by the acts of bin Laden murdered him. Would that person be serving justice or serving revenge?
I would call that revenge. I would call it revenge because you have a very, I would say, like, it's skewed. Your mindset is skewed and you can't really think clearly. Like, you're only thinking about yourself, right? And so whether it's like for the better of people or not, like that's kind of irrelevant to me. I feel like if some person went and killed bin Laden because he killed their family member or whatever, maybe it's better for humanity that bin Laden like no longer existed and like the whole terrorist groups were taken down and all that stuff, right? Maybe that like works out for the better, but it was still revenge because this one person had a vendetta, right? But I feel like a government goes in with an operation and like a plan of action to take down bin Laden in order to take down this group, in order to take down this group and this group and this, and right? Like there's a plan of action. And I feel like one person getting revenge, there's no plan. It's just like, this is going to make me feel better and that's it.
So because that is viewed as revenge over justice and they didn't have the authority to make that decision, do you think that hypothetical person should be punished to the extent of the law that would be if they had killed any other person?
That's even stickier than the difference between revenge and justice.
Would we celebrate Joe like for, you know, trekking over and, you know, killing somebody as we did the government for trekking over and killing somebody?
I don't know. Probably not. Like, as a people, would we celebrate it?
I feel like America definitely would. Like, especially in that specific scenario. Like, that hypothetical. Like, if somebody...
Like, such a bad...
Yes. If, like, if some Joe Blow went over and killed bin Laden, he would have, like...
He would be an American hero.
Yes. He would be given every star, heart, purple thing that they give out. And, like, there would be movies about him.
There would definitely be a movie about him. I feel like... yes.
I feel like he'd be celebrated.
I feel like you're probably right. It's hard for me. I don't know. It's hard.
But that's kind of like...
Because I think
do motives matter if the outcome was right?
Yes. And I think motives matter. Regardless of like the outcome or whatever. I think motives matter. And in defining what is revenge and what is justice, right?
But you're saying not in the extent of the law, though.
What do you...
Like the outcome of, like, bin Laden being, like, killed is the same, but the motives were different between the U.S. government and,
an individual.
Uncle Joe. Like,
So revenge versus justice. That would be a defining... Maybe that's the definition, I guess. Maybe I'm just trying to define.
I don't know. That's kind of a weird, like, very specific hypothetical, but still fun to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the difference between revenge and justice almost is like revenge is malicious.
Yeah.
And justice is has mercy, I guess.
I think
maybe not mercy is the right word, but like, because
I think it's just like, it's more, this is maybe gonna sound, maybe it's more pragmatic, it's more logical, it's more like, well, this is just the fact, you did this and so now this is gonna happen, like that's just all there is to it. Whereas revenge is just more emotional.
Maybe revenge is acted upon by the afflicted.
Yeah.
And justice is acted by representatives of a whole, or of like the peers of the afflicted. And so they were not personally, so justice is served by those who weren't personally affected.
Right.
Because there's bias from the person who was affected. So maybe justice could never be served by somebody who was directly affected.
Possible. I don't know.
I don't know either.
I think I just have like everything I view is pretty much case by case.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
which, I mean, that's how everything really should be viewed.
can't say like, oh, if this happens, then that's this, and then this, and I can't. It's all like, okay, well, who was the person? Who was the other person? What were they feeling? What's their backstory? Like, it's all case by case for me. But I feel like generally speaking, revenge is emotional. Justice is more logical and pragmatic and like, well, this is just the facts.
Right. I think taking things case by case not taking things case by case
is dangerous.
Is the ultimate problem with everything.
Yes.
Because if everybody in our world, especially in America, was to learn that absolutely everything is on a gray spectrum, I feel like there would be so much less divide.
So much less.
Because like we were saying with like Trump making decisions, it's like not every decision that happens is on like the left or the right.
Right.
It's all just decisions. And so if you take the decision by decision instead of the act of a whole, or the actions, in one case versus the other, yes, they both... Okay, so this is a good one. Like in the Me Too movement, there are some, men who very much way, 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 way wrong.
Right.
And then there's the person who, said something, they sexually harassed somebody.
Right.
Versus somebody who sexually assaulted somebody. Both wrong, but on a sliding scale of gray,
right,
and should not be receiving the same punishment legally or the same punishment societally, like in social.
Yeah. Well, the question, I think the question is like, on what scale are we, or are we even rating things on a scale? I mean, I think generally speaking in that situation, no, it's kind of in the time, or at least last year, I don't really know now, but at least last year it was the time of like just uncovering everything, right? It was very like wild anger. This is happening, like let's just get everything out in the open. It was kind of like that time, and I feel like, which I think is necessary. I think like it needed to happen, needs to continue to happen.
Yeah, it's just ripping the Band-Aid off.
Ripping the Band-Aid off. I do think though, I think the question is like, how do we move forward, right? Like how do we put practices into place, and like what are the punishments? Like should someone who just like maybe said something inappropriate or even hurtful or whatever, unwanted advances, is that the same as sexually assaulting someone? Like, I don't know. And
no, it's not.
Well, no, I know. I'm saying like, what should the punishments be?
Yeah.
I don't know. But like, it's very obviously different.
Yeah.
And it's different person by person. And I think you can't just lump everybody into one big group and say like, these are awful people, right? Like that's not quite how life works. I don't know. Everything is just so much more nuanced.
I think it plays into the culture of outrage. And
Twitter's good at this.
Like there seems to be no gray scale for outrage in popular culture and social media. To me, there felt like there was the same amount of backlash and outrage against Aziz Ansari as there was about Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
Like, I understand there was more outrage like in the media and everything about Harvey Weinstein, but but it felt very similar. Like it felt like there was just as much like attack and outrage and people just as angry about Aziz Ansari as there was about Harvey Weinstein. And you're like, those are two completely different things in the same area. Like, yes, they are both in the area of
the same genre.
The same genre.
Yeah.
But nowhere near the same band, the same song, the same like
situation,
anything.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't have the same amount of outrage for that. You know, it's kind of like the other day there was that girl who wore the Chinese dress, and it's like there felt like there was the same amount of outrage against that as there was against somebody committing sexual assault. And you're like, you're saying like the your opinion on cultural appropriation deserves the same amount of intensity and attention as somebody physically assaulting somebody.
Right. Well, and side note, what's funny about the dress situation is that people in China actually praised it.
Right.
They were so excited about it. They thought she looked so beautiful in her dress.
She's spreading our culture. Yay. Like we love it whenever people, you know,
embrace,
pay attention to us.
Yeah, embrace us.
It's like nobody pays attention to anybody but America in America.
Yeah.
And so,
which was just funny. Just a funny side note that America was mad at cultural appropriation, but the people she was actually appropriating were like, yes, China, you know? But I also think like that the whole like levels of outrage, that is the symptom of social media. And like, now we can just self-indulge, and like it feels so good to like get rid of that feeling immediately and like just throw it out there and then like forget about it, because it just feels good to be able to, you know, lash out without thinking. And I think now we just have that opportunity so often that we don't think about it. It's not like before social media, I feel like the opportunities just weren't there. You know, you had to talk to a friend, and you had to like call somebody, and you had to, or text somebody, and you had to like, it was more intentional outrage, right? And I feel like now with social media, we can just outrage and then be done with it. And you can always find somebody else who's going to agree with you.
Yeah.
And then you're going to find somebody else who disagrees with you. So then there's more outrage, right? And you're just like constantly fighting on Twitter.
I also think that social media, it gives you things to think. What am I trying to say here? So before, let's say, social media, and you were to see a picture of, you know, a girl wearing a Chinese dress who was white, you probably wouldn't even think anything about it.
I would have thought nothing about it.
But social media gave somebody the voice to be outraged. They put that outrage out on the internet, and then you see that, and, you know, maybe now it outrages you because of that person's opinion, and then it snowballs, and now there's like this whole outraged group of people.
Yes.
Even though if they were to see it separately from each other and not have any way to communicate, they probably would have been like, prom.
Yeah.
Prom. Like, oh, okay.
I agree. Yeah.
Like, probably.
It is
Nobody outside of that girl's like family and friends probably would have ever seen it.
Probably not. It wouldn't have even been a thing. That is the beauty and the curse of the internet, honestly. Like, because it's cool that you can like relate to other people and like find your corner of the internet, right? And meet these cool people from elsewhere. But then it gives you like the ability to huddle together and just be mad about whatever it is you're mad about without having to like converse with other people and like learn different points of views, you know?
Yeah. Well, we've been talking for a while, so I have...
Went from Elon Musk to...
Yeah. I have like many other thoughts that I could jump in here, but I don't want to make this like a 2-hour long podcast. So we'll end this one here. You can join us in the next one. We'll keep having conversations like this and just keep exploring different things. So as a reminder, this podcast is sponsored by Hint Water. You can check out Hint by going to hint.co/deeply curious. If you visit that link, that just helps this show out. So appreciate you guys doing that. If you are listening to this and you would like to see what we look like or want to watch our facial expressions as we talk, the Deeply Curious is also on YouTube, and we have a YouTube channel devoted to the Deeply Curious podcast, and you can find that in the show notes. If you're watching us right now, hello. Thank you guys for watching. Leave your comments below, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.